This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's January 29th, 2026. And on this day in 1921, the Pacific Northwest had a major weather event that toppled trees. Power lines were knocked out. Roads became impassable. Sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? Maybe a little too close to home right now. That was the Great Olympic Blowdown, a.k.a. the Big Blow. Not an ice storm, but hurricane-force winds that struck the Washington coast. And recovery was pretty complicated. The local timber industry suffered catastrophic losses. A lot of farm animals died, and all those fallen trees and limbs in forested areas created a fire risk. The U.S. Army helped out for a while, carrying out air patrols to watch for early signs of wildfires. But then the appropriation for fuel ran out. The state and the Washington Forest Fire Association had to step up and buy enough gasoline to keep those planes in the air. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with some historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Disasters like our current winter weather mess come in stages. There's the initial event, like the snow turning to freezing rain and coating branches in half an inch or more of ice. There's the initial damage, limbs falling on power lines, roads becoming impassable. Then sometimes you get another wave of damage. For us right now, it's the way that pipes and water mains are breaking as the ground thaws. And at some point in the midst of all of those things, we start to really feel the various costs of the disaster. Maybe it's having to pay for a hotel room because your house is too cold. Not to mention all the food going bad in the fridge or freezer that's been off for days. It's the human cost of bone-weary crews that have worked shift after consecutive shift, trying to clear brush or restore electricity with a to-do list that never seems to get any shorter. It's pulling workers in from other parts of the state where things didn't ice as much and bringing in contract crews from outside of Tennessee. It's nonprofits sourcing and bringing in food to offer free meals from trucks to long lines of people whose kitchen appliances just seem like useless metal boxes now that there's no electricity. It's dripping the faucets around the clock, having to remind yourself that the dollars per day that you're adding to the next bill are a bargain compared to the price a plumber would charge for replacing a burst pipe. I could go on. Right now, the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency is still very much in the mode of responding to all the ways that people need direct and immediate help, but soon they'll start trying to assess that damage and its costs. They'll send that information up to the federal government, and somebody there in D.C. will run that data through whatever formulas and rubrics they have to figure out what kind of assistance might be offered to help us pay for the costs that have been racking up. According to the FEMA website, they're looking at the extent of the disaster, who's been impacted, how much are the individuals bearing the load, and how much do local governments have to do to respond. And then they'll consider what types of federal assistance might be helpful. From there, they'll decide if the storm qualifies for federal help, and if it does, which kind of help. There are two categories. One kind of disaster declaration unlocks assistance for government agencies to help cover all the costs they've taken on. The other kind of declaration opens the door to individual assistance for homeowners. And in past storms, we've seen that things can differ quite a bit across the area affected by a disaster. Some counties will only be approved for the kind of help that pays for infrastructure costs, while in other counties, everybody will have a chance to apply for grants to pay for things like repairs to their homes. Now, it gets a little confusing because there are also other kinds of disaster declarations that can happen earlier in the process. And President Trump did issue one of those on Sunday for all 12 states affected by this storm. That opened the door for the state to use certain federal resources during the initial response. It meant FEMA teams and equipment could be deployed here. It made it possible for federal experts to help out with some of the technical and management aspects to monitoring problems and strategizing solutions. And something similar happened on the state level the other day, too, with Governor Lee temporarily lifting certain rules that say state road crews only work on state roads. Because he lifted the rules, TDOT can now pitch in to clear debris and repair damage on city or county streets for the remainder of this storm response period. But the big FEMA grants that we usually talk about when we're talking about disaster response, those are the ones that haven't been decided yet. They're the ones that depend on the data the state assessment teams will soon be collecting. And the way that data is considered, what kind of assistance is unlocked, is to some extent a federal judgment call. Now, what's really unclear is how much willingness there will be to come through and to what degree. Just this last summer, the White House was signaling an intention to get rid of FEMA altogether and leave disaster assistance to states. Around the same time, a different approach to changing the system bubbled up from Congress, with a bill to simplify applications for federal assistance, but also encouraging states to essentially take on a greater load. That measure would tie the level of aid after a disaster to how much the state had done to prepare beforehand. And that was introduced in July. It hasn't seen any action yet. But change is in the air. And we might, in some ways, be a little bit of a test case for what the thinking is at the moment. And in the meantime, our costs just keep piling up. In just a few minutes, remembering the last really big ice storm that hit Tennessee. That's coming up after the newscast.
The justice system is complicated. I'm Paige Flager, and as WPLN's criminal justice reporter, I'm constantly asking, is the system working? And who is it working for?
The system is broken. I think it's more punitive than anything.
And this is not about justice anymore. This is about vengeance.
We're trying to get justice from a justice system that failed us.
How policies impact real people. Hear their stories here on WPLN News.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. More than half a week out from a winter storm that triggered one of the largest power outages in the city's history, Metro leaders are sounding somber. They've been holding daily briefings on power restoration, threats to the water system, and other news. As of this recording, there are still more than 104,000 Tennessee households with power, 90,000 of those serviced by Nashville Electric Service, and it could well be into the next week before the lights are back on for many. In the meantime, the National Weather Service expects another blast of Arctic air, keeping temperatures below freezing for most of the weekend. Metro Fire Chief William Swan, who oversees Metro's emergency management, again warned residents not to expect this to end quickly.
People are saying they're on edge, not knowing what decision to make. Should we wait or should I go to my plan B? Go ahead and pull that. Use that plan, but I don't want anybody to feel like they're hopeless. If there is an emergency, you call 911. We will get to you. We have shelters that will be able to shelter you 24 hours, as long as you need to be there.
Police and fire stations across the city are still open for warming centers, and there's still 3 shelters available for sleeping at the fairgrounds, at the Southeast Community Center in Antioch, and at the Madison Community Center. With thousands still without power in Nashville, the city has gotten an influx of 911 calls. The system has been so overwhelmed it can't even track the average wait time, says Patrice Coleman. She's the acting director of the Department of Emergency Communications, which runs dispatch. But she and other city officials say, don't give up. WPLN Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams explains.
They are advising if you have an emergency and are calling in, they might not get to your call right away, but they're advising you not to hang up. They're saying stay on the line. It is important for you to be able to remain in the queue that way.
Hanging up and calling back will place the caller at the end of the line, and it adds even more strain on the system. So will non-emergency calls, like those reporting power outages. City officials urge people to call 311 or use Hub Nashville for non-emergencies. The death toll of the winter storm does continue to climb. As of last night, state officials say 13 people across the state have died due to weather. And Nashville hospitals are seeing an uptick in cases of carbon monoxide poisoning amid the winter storm. Vanderbilt's Monroe Carroll Jr. Children's Hospital has treated more than 20 kids in recent days, and they expect to see even more. That's because a leading cause of the poisoning is improper use or ventilation of generators and heat sources. It's possible carbon monoxide poisoning caused the third storm-related death in Davidson County. In a briefing yesterday, Metro Nashville Police Chief John Drake said that it was still under investigation. Generators should always be at least 20 feet outside of the home, and authorities urge the use of carbon monoxide alarms, which are different from smoke alarms. While some Tennesseans are moving into recovery mode from Winter Storm Fern, the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency has set up a disaster information line to help residents with resources for the storm's aftermath. TEMA says trained local volunteers will give up-to-date information about resources in affected counties. You can get assistance by calling the Tennessee Disaster Information Line. That's 1-844-483-6648. Or if you'd like to make some words out of those numbers to help remember them. It's 1-844-4TENN for you. The mother of the teen who opened fire at Antioch High School a year ago has surrendered to Metro Police on a gun charge. Metro Police say DNA evidence linked Krista Thomas to the weapon used in the attack that killed one student and injured another. News Channel 5 reports Thomas had previously been convicted of a felony, making it illegal for her to have a gun. Police charged Thomas with unlawful possession of a firearm. But an investigation into the school shooting did not find Thomas had any direct involvement in that event. Nike's distribution center in Memphis is set to lay off nearly 600 workers. The sportswear giant sent an official notice to the Tennessee Department of Labor about the job cuts, which will take effect in April. The layoffs affect distribution centers in Tennessee and Mississippi and are part of an effort to streamline operations through automation. In total, 775 people will lose their jobs. According to CNBC, the layoffs come amid an effort to turn around slowing sales at Nike while contending with tariffs. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. This week's devastating ice storm has drawn comparisons to another major winter storm that hit Nashville back in 1994. WPLN's Rose Gilbert reports.
With many still struggling to stay warm during this deadly winter storm, a lot of Nashvillians are saying the same thing.
I ain't never seen nothing like this since about 94 for the ice.
That's Marcellus Bostek. He says he lost power for more than a week during the 1994 storm.
Didn't have no lights for about 8 days. Yeah.
This go-round, more than 200,000 people were left without power at peak, and now tens of thousands are at risk of having no electricity for a week or more. These are historic numbers. In fact, the Nashville Electric Service says it's the highest percentage of customers they've ever had without power at one single time. Brent Baker is head of operations and innovation at NES.
The last significant ice storm like this was in 1994. A few years ago, we had some pretty severe spring storms, some tornadoes and El Derechos that came through. But this is it's been several years since something like this has happened in the wintertime at this magnitude.
Local resident Carlotta McKee vividly remembers how destructive that storm was.
I was here for 94. I thought we were being bombed because all the transformers were blowing up. I was living in Inglewood at that time. And some people in my neighborhood didn't have any power for 2 weeks.
But a lot has changed since 1994. Back then, there were no text alerts, no social media updates, and no online power outage maps. There was, of course, radio. This time, Nashville was more prepared. The city bought more snowplows and brined the streets ahead of time. McKee says she was more prepared as well.
I have water and I've got a lot of food and I've, praise God, have a gas stove. And I have a wood-burning fireplace, so I've brought lots of wood actually in the house.
While we may have been more prepared, there may have also been more ice. The slow recovery is worrying residents and officials. Leaders have ramped up welfare checks and are urging people to check on family, friends, and neighbors. Rose Gilbert, WPLN News.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.